Some jobs are boring, some are stressful, and then there are the jobs that change the way you sleep for the rest of your life. This happened to a night shift cashier at a small convenience store just outside town. For years, the story spread through locals as nothing more than an urban legend. Then one day, someone found the old security footage. What was on that recording was never released to the public, but the cashier told his story before he disappeared. And if even half of it is true, no amount of money would convince anyone to work another overnight shift in that store. The store wasn't special. It sat beside a 2-lane highway with nothing around it except a gas station, a patch of woods, and an abandoned motel that had been empty for longer than anyone could remember. During the day, the place was busy enough. Truck drivers stopped for coffee, parents grabbed snacks before soccer practice, teenagers wandered in after school to buy soda they didn't need. But after midnight, business slowed to almost nothing. On most nights, only one employee worked the shift. The cashier had grown used to the silence. He had his routine: mop the floor, restock the drinks, check expiration dates, drink terrible coffee, watch the security monitors whenever boredom took over. There wasn't much else to do. Until a Thursday night in late October. Rain had been falling for hours, the kind that made the highway disappear behind sheets of water. Just after 1:30 in the morning, the automatic doors slid open. A little girl walked inside. She couldn't have been older than 8. She wasn't wearing a coat. Her clothes were soaked through, as though she'd been standing in the rain for hours. Her bare feet left muddy prints across the white tile. The cashier looked toward the parking lot, expecting to see worried parents searching for her. "Hey," he called gently. "Are your parents outside?" The girl didn't answer. She wandered slowly toward the candy aisle, trailing water behind her. He sighed, grabbed a towel, and followed. By the time he reached the aisle, she was gone. He stopped. The aisle was only a few meters long. There was nowhere to hide. The shelves were low. There were no exits, no doors, no windows. He checked every aisle. Thinking she might have slipped into the restroom, he searched there too. Empty. The muddy footprints simply stopped, as though whoever had made them had vanished in the middle of the floor. He stared for a long moment before convincing himself he had imagined it. Maybe the prints had dried faster than he thought. Maybe the child had run outside while he wasn't looking. Maybe exhaustion was playing tricks on him. He returned to the register. An hour passed. By 4 in the morning, the storm had finally weakened. The cashier locked the entrance for the nightly cash count. As part of company policy, he rewound the security footage to make sure nothing unusual had happened during the shift. He skipped back to the moment the girl entered. There she was, walking through the front door, leaving muddy footprints, exactly as he remembered. He watched himself leave the counter and head toward the candy aisle. The camera switched to the aisle. The girl stood perfectly still. Then the cashier entered the aisle. He walked straight past her, within arm's reach, without reacting. He searched left. He searched right. He even looked behind the shelves. The girl never moved. She remained standing in plain sight the entire time, watching him. He remembered looking directly at that spot. He remembered seeing an empty aisle. So why had the camera recorded a little girl standing there the entire time? He leaned closer to the monitor. That's when he noticed something that made his stomach tighten. The timestamp on the footage hadn't frozen, even though the video was paused. The little girl was still moving, slowly. She smiled. The screen suddenly filled with static. The store lights flickered once, then every monitor went black. The silence inside the store became unbearable. No refrigerators humming, no fluorescent lights buzzing. Nothing. Just darkness. Then, from somewhere inside the store, a child's voice whispered, "You finally saw me." The cashier wasn't alone anymore, and whatever had walked into the store during the storm had never left. The convenience store is still open, but no one works overnight. If you're ever driving late and a soaked little girl asks if she can come inside, don't look away. Because if you blink, she may already be standing behind you. Have you ever worked a night shift where something felt wrong? Tell me your experience in the comments. When hikers disappeared in Black Pine Forest, everyone trusted one man. He knew every trail, every shortcut, every abandoned cabin. He even volunteered to help search for the missing. Nobody realized the man leading the search already knew exactly where the bodies were. Black Pine Forest stretched for miles, dense enough that GPS signals faded in and out. Cell service disappeared after the first few trails. It was popular with campers, photographers, and hikers looking for solitude. Whenever someone got lost, there was always one person willing to help. A quiet man in his 40s. He lived alone in a weather-beaten cabin near the park entrance. He knew every inch of those woods. Park rangers trusted him. Local police trusted him. Families of missing hikers thanked him. He never asked for money. He simply said, "Nobody deserves to disappear out here." Looking back, those words meant something very different. At first, nobody connected the cases. A college student failed to return from a weekend hike. Months later, a married couple disappeared while photographing waterfalls. Then a retired teacher vanished during a morning walk. Different ages, different backgrounds, different seasons. The only thing they shared: every one of them had been seen speaking to the same local man shortly before entering the forest. Nobody found that suspicious. He talked to everyone. Whenever someone disappeared, he was the first to volunteer. He searched longer than anyone else. He skipped meals. He stayed out after dark. Families called him a hero. News reporters interviewed him. His face appeared on television beside grieving relatives. He always looked exhausted. He always looked sincere. No one noticed that he quietly steered search teams away from one particular valley. Everything changed because one person escaped. A teenage backpacker became separated from friends after sunset. Hours later, he stumbled into the stranger's cabin. The man welcomed him inside, made coffee, offered dry clothes, said he could spend the night. At first, nothing felt wrong. Then the teenager noticed something. There were no family photographs, no books, no decorations. Just shelves filled with neatly labeled hiking backpacks. Dozens of them, all different colors, all different sizes. The teenager recognized one backpack, a bright orange pack. It belonged to a college student whose disappearance had made national news. The stranger noticed where he was looking. The smile disappeared. Neither of them spoke. The teenager later said the silence lasted less than 5 seconds, but it felt like 5 hours. Then the man quietly locked the front door. The teenager jumped through a side window. Glass shattered. He ran. The man followed, not shouting, not threatening,
just walking calmly, as though he knew exactly where the terrified boy would end up. The teenager reached a logging road just before sunrise. A passing truck driver stopped. The stranger never came out of the trees. Police returned to the cabin with a search warrant. The man was gone. Behind the cabin, freshly turned soil stretched across part of the hillside. Investigators kept digging. One grave became 2, then 5, then 12. Some victims had been missing for nearly a decade. Most had died within hours of arriving at the cabin. Personal belongings were carefully cleaned and stored inside, like trophies.
The search for the killer lasted 4 days. A helicopter finally spotted him sitting beneath a small tree, nearly 10 miles from the cabin. He wasn't running, he wasn't hiding. He was already dead. He had taken his own life with a hunting rifle. No note, no explanation, only a folded map. Every location marked in red. Investigators later confirmed the markings led to victims who had never been reported missing. The true number may never be known. The cabin was demolished. The forest trails reopened. People still camp there every summer. Most never think about what happened. But locals have a habit. If a stranger offers to guide them deeper into the woods, they politely decline. Not because they believe every stranger is dangerous, but because once, one of them was. The trial ended on a Friday. The lawyer thought the hardest part was over. He had no idea someone in the courtroom had spent the next 2 years learning everything about him. His schedule, his home, his kid, his wife's morning routine, his favorite restaurant, his security system. By the time he realized he was being watched, it was already too late. The lawyer first noticed small things. His trash bins were moved, a porch light that he never remembered turning off, strange sounds coming toward the woods every night. His daughter once asked, "Dad, why does that man keep sitting in the gray car?" By the time he looked outside, the car was gone. The stalker never rushed. He watched for months. He learned when each child left for school, which bedroom belonged to whom, which kitchen window was never locked. He filled notebooks with observations, not out of anger, out of patience. He believed revenge deserved preparation. The lawyer began receiving anonymous letters. None contained threats, only facts. Your son forgot his backpack yesterday. Your wife waters the flowers at 7:15. You really should fix the side gate. Police increased patrols. Nothing ever appeared on security cameras. The stalker always stayed just outside their view. One Friday night, the stalker came to the lawyer's house with a big axe and 2 sharp knives. He entered through the kitchen's back door and entered. He walked so silently, without making a sound, and made his way upstairs to the kids' room, where the child slept. He did some ungodly stuff to the child. He dismembered the child, cutting his limb away, and the arms, and finally decapitating him. By then, the mother was awake due to some loud sound and headed to the child's room to check what was happening to the kid. But unfortunately for her, the killer was behind the door. Immediately she entered the kid's room, she saw the horrible scene, and before she could scream, the killer strangled her from behind and used his knife to cut her throat as she struggled desperately and still held her to bleed out before dropping her lifeless body on the cold floor. Soon after, he left for the lawyer's room to take his life, but the lawyer woke up before the killer could cut him. Immediately, he raised his axe. The man woke up and kicked him, but the axe still cut the man's finger
and made him bleed seriously. He managed to escape to the street, as leaves a trail of blood behind him, and managed to call 911 and explained the whole situation.
Despite serious injuries, the lawyer managed to force his way out through a side entrance and reach a neighbor's house. He collapsed before he could finish explaining what had happened. His injuries permanently affected one of his hands, and he would spend months recovering. That desperate escape ultimately became the reason the attacker was identified. The suspect doesn't surrender. 6 days later, exhausted and attempting to flee through woodland near a state border, he is tracked by police dogs and arrested after a brief chase. Final reveal. During interrogation, he calmly explains that he blamed the lawyer for his brother's conviction. The evidence shows he spent nearly 2 years watching the family, convinced he was carrying out justice, and he has no regret for what he has done. The suspect received multiple life sentences. The lawyer eventually returned to practicing law, but rarely spoke publicly about the case. Neighbors later admitted they had seen the gray sedan parked on the street dozens of times. None of them thought it was important enough to report.